As I gazed at the snow dancing outside my window, I found myself dreaming the same dream again. Standing in the classroom, straining my eyes not to miss the slightest change in the children's expressions. The intuition I developed during my 30 years of teaching still lives on within me, even after retirement. "Good morning, Mrs. Mary." Children's voices echo through the quiet residential street on their way to school. My figure waving from the window of my single-person home probably hasn't changed from years ago. However, a constant worry was churning in my heart. It was about my beloved granddaughter, Emma. Looking at the social media posts flowing across my smartphone screen, I let out a deep sigh. There was a string of perfectly crafted stories about a happy family. My only daughter Caroline, her husband James, and their 3-year-old Emma. Countless photos of seemingly happy smiles. But to my eyes, which had watched thousands of children as a teacher, something lurking behind those smiles bothered me endlessly. "Mary, have you seen Emma's recent posts?" Sarah Johnson's voice trembled slightly on the other end of the phone. She was Caroline's best friend since high school and now a renowned pediatrician in town. She's also one of the few people who understand my concerns about Emma's situation. "Yes, I have." That smile seems a bit. As I stumbled over my words, Sarah quietly continued, "Unnatural, right? Especially in that recent cosmetics brand advertisement. I'm thinking of contacting Caroline." Caroline and James were in the midst of rapid growth as IT company executives. Since a major investment 2 years ago, their lives had changed dramatically. In particular, social media presence had become a crucial PR strategy, and they became obsessed with crafting an image of the perfect family. Emma had been a social media star since birth. From the moment she let out her first cry, her life has been meticulously recorded and continuously shared. By her first birthday, she had already debuted as a child model, and recently, she was even chosen as a model for a luxury cosmetics brand. The numerous hashtags attached to posts like #perfectfamily and #dreamparentchild felt somehow painful to see. When I visited her daycare, Emma was still the bright and active little girl she'd always been. Chasing friends around, building sandcastles. The normal behavior of a 3-year-old was there. But on social media, she was gradually starting to look like a different person. Perfectly styled hair, grown-up poses, doll-like smiles. "Mommy, are you busy?" During a weekend FaceTime call, Emma's voice sounded a bit lonely. Even through the screen, I could tell something was hiding behind her eyes. I instinctively reached out to touch the screen. "Emma, you can talk to Grandma anytime." At that moment, no one imagined those words would lead to an anguished cry in the middle of the night. Recently, Caroline had begun keeping her distance from me. Where she used to bring Emma over to play every weekend, now we barely meet once a month. Behind her excuse of being busy with work, I sensed there might be another reason. Sarah seemed to share my concerns. As a pediatrician, she was also in charge of Emma's regular checkups. Emma's been losing weight lately, and she seems sleep-deprived. I heard there are photo shoots late into the night. We confirmed our mutual worries but found ourselves unable to take concrete action. Caroline's company was growing rapidly and attracting investor attention. In a world where social media presence directly affected company credibility, pointing out family issues could impact their management. Then came the fateful night. The longest and shortest night of my life. A night that would test all my experience as a teacher, mother, and grandmother. At 2 a.m. on December 23rd, my cell phone rang. Initially, I thought I was dreaming. But on the screen was the face of my beloved granddaughter Emma. Her face was visibly swollen. In the dimly lit room, her small eyes were glistening with tears. "Emma, what's wrong?" In the dark room, Emma's tiny voice trembled. "Grandma, Mommy's angry. It hurts." I could hear violent noises in the background. Caroline's voice seemed to be shouting something. Suddenly, the screen shook violently, James's panicked face briefly appeared, and then the call cut off. My heart was pounding. In this abnormal situation, my intuition, honed through 30 years of teaching experience, was raising alarm bells. The experience of always being alert for signs of abuse was telling me that every cell in my body sensed danger. I immediately called Caroline's cell phone, but there was no answer. James's number and the house phone were also unreachable. Checking the timeline, I found a photo posted 2 hours ago. "Late night cosmetics shoot, our little model is sleepy but doing her best. #angelic sleepy face #nightscape us." A photo shoot in the middle of the night. For a 3-year-old child. Anger welled up inside me. When I called Sarah, she answered immediately. "Mary, what's wrong at this hour?" After I explained the situation, her voice changed completely. "I'm going right now. I'll arrange for an ambulance too. You should come immediately." My hands shook as I got dressed. Even as I pulled the car keys from the drawer, Emma's crying voice wouldn't leave my head. The usually 30-minute drive felt extraordinarily long tonight. Along the way, I decided to contact the police. Maybe it was an overreaction. But the experience of regret from my teaching days pushed me forward. I never wanted to feel again the regret of noticing but not acting. Under the pre-dawn sky, I headed to my daughter's house. The silence of the luxury residential area was suddenly broken by the sound of sirens. An ambulance, followed by police cars, stopped in front of Caroline's house. When I arrived, Caroline and James were nowhere to be seen. The entrance was locked, but the police had already begun their investigation, and Emma's crying could be heard from inside. "Mary!" Sarah rushed over. "We found Emma. She was locked in her room." At that moment, paramedics brought Emma out on a stretcher. She had an 4 in her arm. The swelling in her face had gotten worse. She had rashes all over her body, clearly showing an allergic reaction. "Grandma." As Emma called out to me in a weak voice, I instinctively hugged her. Her small body trembled in my arms. A police officer approached me. "Mrs. Wilson, Do you have any idea where your daughter and her husband might be? I shook my head. The luxury brand bag by the entrance and the luxury car in the garage both told the story of their owner's absence. Inside the house looked as if a storm had swept through. Scattered cosmetics in the living room. A broken vase on the floor. And in the basement study, traces of an online meeting with investors were found. According to the police, security cameras showed Caroline and James leaving in their car around 3 a.m. Had they chosen to flee as their final choice, exhausted from playing the perfect family? It was a night with important meetings with Asian investors, Martha, the housekeeper, was telling the police. A $50 million investment decision was due tomorrow, and they were in meetings until late. Under the dawn light slowly filtering in, the ambulance headed to the hospital with Emma. Sarah and I followed. Looking back, this was the moment our battle began. A battle to reclaim the true bonds of family that were nearly lost in the illusion of social media. And I understood. Behind this incident lay the distorted values created by modern society. The portrayal of a perfect family on social media. Company value directly linked to investors' evaluations. And the essence of being human, lost amid that pressure. As the ambulance siren echoed through the quiet morning streets, I made a firm vow. No matter the cost, I would protect Emma and our family. The pediatric ward at Central Hospital is usually a place filled with children's laughter. Walls decorated with storybook characters. Colorful chairs lining the hallways. Everything designed to encourage young patients. But this morning, a heavy atmosphere dominated the building. The cause of the allergic reaction was adult cosmetics, Sarah said grimly, reviewing the test results in the examination room. The fluorescent light highlighted her tired expression. It was detected in multiple areas of her skin. And these are high-end brand new products. Test samples that haven't been released to the public yet. I caught my breath. The social media post from last night flashed through my mind. The late-night photo shoot. Emma's photo smiling with a sleepy expression. It hurt to imagine what had been happening behind the scenes. That's not all, Sarah continued, lowering her voice. Her hand trembled slightly as she turned the medical records. There are old bruises all over her body. Concentrated especially on her back and arms. All in places that wouldn't show up on camera. And she took a deep breath before continuing. There are clear signs of sleep deprivation. She shows abnormal levels of fatigue for a 3-year-old. From the examination room window, I could see the hospital courtyard. There, children of the same age were playing with nurses. Emma should have been able to spend her time just being a child like that. In the hallway, Child Protection Service workers were talking in hushed voices. Emma's temporary protection had already been decided. Since morning, various experts had been gathering at the hospital. Mrs. Mary, a young female worker, approached me. Her name tag read Elizabeth Collins. We've received the report from the daycare. There were several concerns about Emma's recent behavior. The report Elizabeth handed me chronicled Emma's changes in chronological order. When she suddenly became introverted. the day she started leaving her lunch uneaten, and how she began refusing to be photographed at daycare events, saying, "Mommy will be angry." The teacher had reported these changes to the director. However, considering Caroline's social status, active intervention had been avoided. I looked up at the ceiling and let out a deep sigh. Why hadn't I noticed? No, why hadn't I acted when I did notice? My responsibility as a teacher, mother, and grandmother weighed heavily. I've organized the social media posts chronologically. Sarah showed me her tablet. There, Caroline's photos and videos were arranged by date. Emma's expressions, which showed natural smiles in the beginning, gradually became more artificial. Photo times increasingly shifted to late night or early morning. Luxury hotel logos, overseas tourist spots, lavish party venues in the background. Had all of these been mere props to create the perfect family? The comments section is concerning too. Sarah pointed out areas where followers had expressed worry. She looks a bit tired, isn't it past bedtime? Her smile seems different lately. However, these comments were always countered with perfect responses. Angels never tire, working hard toward her future dreams. It's a special day, so she's staying up late just this once. The monetization data from the posts shocked us. According to digital marketing experts' analysis, the advertising revenue per post featuring Emma far exceeded Caroline's monthly salary. And that income was being recorded as the company's PR budget. I was speechless at the reality that a child's smile had become a business tool. By Emma's bedside in the hospital room, I held her small hand as she slept soundly. Her arm with the 4 still showed signs of the cosmetics allergy. Her usually rosy cheeks were now pale from medication. "Mrs. Mary," a nurse quietly called out. "Visiting hours are over, but you've been granted special permission to stay." Outside the window, the evening sky was turning red. In the hospital parking lot, reporters were still visible. This incident had created significant social ripples about children's rights in the social media era. "Grandma." Emma woke up. There were no more tears in her eyes. Only a mix of deep fatigue and relief. Her expression as she looked at the 4 showed a maturity beyond her years. "Are Mommy and Daddy not coming back?" I stumbled over how to answer that question. How do you explain this to a 3-year-old? How do you help them understand parental love and its distorted expression? Outside the window, camera flashes from reporters began lighting up the hospital parking lot. This story was just beginning. The pursuit of truth, the healing of wounded hearts, and the long journey to restore lost family bonds awaited us. The police interrogation room was smaller than I had imagined. Gray walls and a simple desk. A security camera quietly blinked in the corner. The late-night meeting with important investors. That was the trigger for everything. Martha, the housekeeper, continued her testimony with a trembling voice. Her eyes remained fixed on a point on the desk. It was a late-night conference due to the time difference with Asian investors. We had to adjust to Singapore time. Martha took a deep breath. A $50 million investment decision was due the next day, and the company's survival depended on it. The interrogator quietly moved his pen across the paper. The room's atmosphere grew heavier. That night, Caroline was particularly tense. She believed that the perfect family image would be crucial for the investment. They planned to use a video with Emma as the centerpiece of the presentation. Martha's testimony gradually approached the core of the matter. A new cosmetics line announcement was being prepared, with plans to make Emma the image model. But her voice broke off. Emma became ill during that shoot. They were filming a video for investors using the new cosmetics. But Emma's skin suddenly turned red. Caroline, panicked, scolded Emma. A mother desperately trying to fix the makeup. An agitated father. And in the midst of the chaos, Emma called me for help. The iPad was usually strictly controlled, Martha continued. But that night, in all the chaos, it was left where Emma could reach it. The police investigation progressed rapidly. Security cameras at a private airport captured Caroline and James's final appearance. Footage showed them boarding a private jet that had been prepared for investor meetings. With passports and cash in hand, they disappeared overseas, seemingly fleeing from media scrutiny. When they heard the ambulance sirens, they completely lost their composure. Martha's voice trembled again. The investment presentation's cancellation became certain, and rumors of stock price collapse began circulating. New evidence kept flowing into the investigation headquarters. Social media posting history. Metadata showing late-night photo shoots. And numerous deleted videos discovered on Emma's mobile device. Records of tears shed behind the smiles. 72 hours after the international warrant was issued, Caroline and James turned themselves in at Singapore airport. "We sought too much perfection," Caroline testified during police questioning. Her eyes were heavy with exhaustion and regret. The company's growth, investors' expectations, social media evaluations, everything backed us into a corner. Before we knew it, we were treating our own daughter like a mere commodity. The court proceedings attracted social attention. As the daycare's reports were read aloud, specific evidence of Emma's changes was revealed one after another. Sarah's medical findings also coldly demonstrated the reality of abuse. However, the most moving testimony came from Emma herself. During a video-linked hearing, attended by a child psychologist, she said, "I love Mommy and Daddy. But Mommy and Daddy in front of the camera, they were scary." The courtroom fell silent at these words. The judge's eyes appeared to moisten slightly. The verdict was more lenient than expected. The judge positioned them as victims of modern society's distorted values. SNS addiction and work pressure were recognized as factors that had driven them to this point. With participation in rehabilitation programs as a condition, prison sentences were suspended, and instead, the following conditions were imposed. Temporary transfer of Emma's custody to me. Mandatory professional counseling. Participation in social media addiction treatment programs. Regular attendance at parent-child relationship improvement sessions. temporary resignation from company management. After the verdict, the company was restructured under new management. A healthy management policy not dependent on social media marketing was introduced. Strict guidelines for using children in advertisements were also established. Most importantly, Caroline and James were beginning to understand the true value of family for the first time. In the counseling room, they tearfully said, "We sincerely hope for the day when Emma's smile can be seen just as our daughter's smile, not as a business tool." With the arrival of a new season, our family was beginning to slowly mark time for healing. 1 year later, Emma attended her preschool graduation ceremony. The children's voices echoed along with the school song flowing through the auditorium. Sunlight streaming through the windows gently illuminated the graduation projects displayed on the walls. From among the audience, I watched my granddaughter. Emma was in the front row, singing shoulder to shoulder with her friends. Her expression was filled with natural joy, completely different from the manufactured smiles in those old photographs. At her blue uniform collar was a handmade flower brooch, which Caroline had quietly pinned there that morning. Caroline and James were there too. Having completed their rehabilitation program, they were slowly regaining confidence as parents. All social media accounts had been deleted, replaced by precious time spent together as a family. During the ceremony, Emma's class began their ensemble performance. The xylophone sound spread peacefully through the venue. Each note showed the results of their dedicated practice. I noticed Caroline secretly wiping her eyes. Looking back, this year has been a time of learning for all of us. In the rehabilitation program, Caroline confronted her own childhood. She realized how she had unconsciously imposed on Emma the same values of perfectionism that she had been raised with. Through dialogues with counselors, she gradually learned to forgive herself. James changed too. He temporarily stepped away from company management, prioritizing family time instead. He plays with Emma in the park on weekends and makes sure to eat dinner together on weekdays. He no longer carries a camera, just cherishing the moments right in front of him. Mary, Sarah approached me after the ceremony. Though not in her white coat, she maintained her dignified presence as a physician. Emma's latest test results are perfect. Her emotional wounds are healing bit by bit too. At Sarah's clinic now, regular study sessions are held for parents about the relationship between social media and child rearing. Emma's case had sounded a significant alarm bell for modern society. Children's smiles aren't business tools. They're just treasures. When Caroline spoke these words at a recent study session, many participants were moved to tears. Her words carried the weight that only someone with experience could convey. "Grandma." Emma came running over. In her hands was a handmade flower crown. "We all made this together. The teacher helped us." Each tiny petal carried messages from her friends. "Love you, Emma. Always keep smiling." The sincere feelings of children were packed into it. Caroline approached shyly. "Mom, we'd like to celebrate at home today." I made Emma's favorite cake. The tears in her eyes no longer held regret. Instead, they contained the light of new hope. "Of course," I answered. "Let's celebrate together." On the way home, Emma held both my hand and Caroline's as we walked. The spring sunlight cast our shadows on the ground. No more camera flashes. Just peaceful everyday life. "Hey," Emma suddenly stopped. "I'm happy." At those words, we instinctively looked at each other. The true bonds that had almost been lost beyond social media were now definitely here. When we got home, James had prepared homemade pizza dough. Emma's favorite toppings were colorfully arranged. On the table, origami paper for crafts was also laid out. "I thought we could all make pizza together today." Emma's eyes sparkled at those words. Valuing the joy of creating together over perfect appearances, that had become our new family's way. And I realized, there's no such thing as a perfect family. But relationships where we care for and support each other, even if imperfect, that's what makes a real family. In the evening twilight, illuminated by the setting sun through the living room window, we chatted with genuine smiles. Those smiles held no lies anymore. Just genuine affection. I still sometimes remember that midnight phone call. Emma's voice, gathering her small courage to ask for help, was the beginning of our new story. It was also the beginning of a journey back from the virtual world of social media to the warmth of reality. Sometimes getting hurt, sometimes stumbling, but moving forward step by step. Perhaps that's what real family looks like. Now, our family photos have no likes or shares. But they have real smiles. And that's enough.